Marcus Locke pushed through the swinging door of the red rail diner, breath visible in the frigid air. His dog tags clinked softly against the worn leather of his coat as he stepped into the amber glow of the counter lights. Conversation in the room halted mid-sentence. Mugs hovered, forks paused, eyes darted away. About 20 feet ahead, the flight crew gathered around a corner booth, their crisp uniforms a sharp contrast to Marcus's weathered jacket. "Samantha, look at this guy," one young attendant whispered, amusement dancing in her eyes. Purser Samantha Rhodes leaned forward, smirk curling her lips. "He doesn't even belong here," she said loudly enough for everyone to hear. A ripple of laughter followed, cold and dismissive. Marcus's jaw tensed. He'd faced worse in Kandahar, but this cut deeper. He slid onto a stool at the counter, choosing the seat with the best view of both the entrance and the kitchen door. His breath steadied as he murmured, "Just coffee, black." The waitress, Rachel Miller, slid a menu toward him with a sympathetic smile. She'd seen hardship in his salt and pepper hair and the disciplined way he held himself. Moments later, Rhodes strutted over in high heels, her colleagues trailing behind. "What'll it be, Granddad?" she taunted, voice sweet but sharp. "We don't serve riffraff in the VIP section." Forks clinked again as other patrons shifted uncomfortably. Marcus's eyes narrowed, but he said nothing, sipping his coffee with deliberate calm. When Rhodes tossed a sugar packet onto his plate, he finally spoke. His voice was low but unwavering. "I earned these dog tags in Kandahar." He tapped the chain around his neck. "And I don't need to earn my dignity again." The diner fell silent. Rhodes' smirk faltered, her hand instinctively drifting to her purse. In that frozen moment, Marcus reached inside his pocket for an old Pentagon-issued phone. He pressed a single button. Somewhere, a control tower lit up with his name. The room held its breath. Whatever came next would change everything. Tell us where you're watching from today, because sometimes the quietest voice carries the greatest power. He closed his eyes and let the hum of the diner fade into the background, replaced by a flash of desert sun and sand blowing across the tarmac outside Kandahar. In his mind's eye, Marcus Locke was 28 again, in full combat kit, boots planted in dust as mortar rounds slammed into the convoy beside him. He remembered the weight of the rifle in his hands and the shouts of his men, voices laced with fear and adrenaline. When the RPG struck the lead Humvee, he didn't think. Marcus dove into the blast, hauling Corporal Pierce to cover just as the rear vehicle exploded in a fireball. He treated Pierce's wounds under incoming fire, the scream of rotors overhead barely audible through the roar of conflict. Days later, an IED shredded his left leg. He felt nothing at first, only the shock of losing balance. When he looked down, he saw the mess of bone and cloth. His world tilted, a white-hot pain blossoming through every nerve. He recalled gritting his teeth and pushing back the surge of panic, reciting the mantra drilled into him at boot camp. Clear sight lines, identify threats, maintain situational awareness, Purple Heart, Silver Star, medals pinned cold against his chest at the field hospital in Germany, the patchwork of scars mapped across his body. He'd earned them all, but the medals meant nothing once he returned home. The VA paperwork went missing. The promotions stalled. He watched old brothers walk off base into civilian lives he couldn't hold. Marriages, mortgages, meaning. Back in Riverbrook, the snow fell in gentle waves, blanketing the town in silence. He'd traded combat boots for frayed work boots and the uniform for second-hand jackets. But the man standing now at the diner counter, chin drawn back, shoulders squared, was the same warrior who refused to leave a man behind under enemy fire. Rachel poured him fresh coffee, her eyes meeting his in quiet understanding. She'd seen enough pain in her life not to ask why he'd come here tonight. He nodded his thanks, the steam curling into the air like a promise. Out the window, the flight crew clustered, whispering. Marcus let the memory of Kandahar steel him for what came next. He lifted his mug and took a steadying sip, the warmth spreading through him like resolve. Regardless of this moment's outcome, he still knew who he was, and he still knew how to fight. Marcus settled deeper onto the counter stool, the remnants of his meatloaf untouched. Outside, Samantha Rhodes and her crew exchanged glances, their laughter long since fading. The tension in the diner was thick enough to taste. Every eye on him, every fork paused in midair. He reached into the inner pocket of his worn jacket and pulled out a phone that looked impossibly out of place. It was a Pentagon-issued burner, no larger than a credit card, its surface scarred from years of service. He flipped it open and dialed a number by instinct. No hesitation. Rachel paused, whisk in hand, watching him quietly. In the 2 minutes she'd poured his coffee and watched him eat, she'd seen every fraction of a dollar in his eyes. The pride, the pain, the memory of something bigger. Now, she realized he was about to do something none of the flight crew would ever expect. The device clicked, and a calm, professional voice answered on the other end. "Operations Control. Locke?" He leaned forward, voice low but crystal clear. "This is Locke. Execute priority lockup for Project Nightingale. Confirm freeze of all fleet upgrades. $60 million. A beat of silence, then the voice responded. "Confirmed. All upgrades on hold pending board review." On the far side of the diner, Rhodes's jaw dropped. She rose to her feet, the rest of her crew frozen in shock. Their world, built on privilege and uniformed authority, unraveled with those few words. Rachel's heart pounded. She fumbled for her phone, instinct and compassion colliding. Record or not? She tapped the record button just as the hum of the diner returned to a stunned whisper. Marcus flipped the burner shut, sliding it into his pocket with a soft thunk. He lifted his coffee cup and took a slow, deliberate sip, as if nothing extraordinary had just happened. The warmth spread through him, a quiet vindication. Outside the frosted windows, the neon sign of the Red Rail Diner flickered against the gathering dusk. Inside, the flight crew, once so certain of their power, stood stripped bare by a single, silent phone call. Rachel exhaled and, without a word, raised her own phone toward him. He met her eyes, nodded once, and that nod spoke louder than any applause. The fight wasn't over, but tonight, Marcus Locke had reminded them all who really held the power. The control room at Skyway Air's corporate headquarters was hushed when the alert pinged across every console. Directors exchanged puzzled glances as the words, "Project Nightingale, $60,000 upgrade," locked flashed in crimson on the main display wall. "Christ, what does this mean?" muttered one executive, fingers hovering over a tablet. Samantha Rhodes' name was on every manifest for that fleet overhaul, and right now, her career was evaporating. A dozen board members leaned forward, eyes darting between the screen and the live feed from the Red Rail Diner, where Rachel Miller's phone camera still captured Marcus Locke's silent victory. In the center of the room, CEO Margaret Ellis cleared her throat. "It appears that Mr. Locke's shareholder privilege has invoked an automatic freeze on all further expenditures," she said, voice tight. "We need an immediate audit and a full board review." The room erupted in controlled chaos. Emails firing off, phones ringing off the hook, stunned executives racing to decipher the bylaw clauses that no one had expected to see in action. Back at the diner, Samantha Rhodes felt her phone vibrate. She stepped outside, staring at the screen. A curt email from headquarters. Effective immediately, you are relieved of your purser duties pending investigation. Her cheeks went cold, heart pounding. The power she'd wielded so casually was slipping through her fingers faster than she could process. Inside, Marcus savored the moment. He lifted his cup again, not to drink, but to feel the warmth, the validation of every sacrifice and scar that had brought him here. Satisfaction mingled with a pinch of guilt. He saw the flight crew's slump-shouldered confusion, heard the muted gasps. Yet he reminded himself, dignity once taken had to be reclaimed. Rachel slipped away to her car, hands trembling as she uploaded the recording. She knew this was bigger than a local scandal. It was a reckoning for every veteran slid into the shadows. At HQ, Margaret Ellis tapped her pen. "Prepare a press release," she ordered. "We'll announce the suspension of Project Nightingale and restructure the entire leadership team." Somewhere in Riverbrook, Marcus leaned back, exhaling a breath he'd held for decades. In that locked-up clause and frozen funds, he'd shown that real power didn't need a uniform or a flight badge, just a truth spoken at the right moment. The war for his dignity was far from over, but tonight he'd won a decisive battle. News of the freeze hit social media before the diner's neon sign even stopped flickering. By midday, the hashtag #FreezeTheFleet was trending in Riverbrook. Neighbors texting clips, sharing Rachel's video of Marcus's quiet command. Local news vans rolled up outside the Red Rail Diner, cameras trained on the frosted windows where Samantha Rhodes and her crew once held court. In homes and diners across town, people paused their routines. A handyman sipping coffee in his garage muttered, "Did that homeless vet really just lock down $60 million bucks?" A retiree on her porch shook her head in awe. Even at the post office, clerks whispered, "He beat corporate power with a single call." Marcus watched all of it on Rachel's phone, the glow illuminating his lined face. Satisfaction surged. This was more than a personal victory. He'd sparked a conversation about respect, honor, and how we treat the people who've served. But behind that pride lurked a flicker of uncertainty. Would anyone recognize the man beneath the medals and the jacket? A ping reminded him. Rachel had tagged a local veteran support page. "They want to feature your story," she whispered. Marcus tapped the link. Comments poured in. "He deserves a toast. My husband's a vet. We see you, brother. Where are you watching this from? Drop your town." He scrolled through mentions of Pittsburgh, Erie, even Louisville. He allowed himself a small smile. "Riverbrook," he murmured. "But I'm not alone." At the diner, Rhodes's departure was official. A terse memo announced her suspension pending board review. She gathered her things in stunned silence, uniform crisp but spirit shattered. The rest of the crew drifted out behind her, heels echoing on linoleum. Meanwhile, in a heated roundtable at Skyway Club, disgruntled executives argued PR damage control. "We need to rebuild trust," someone said. "But how do you spin a $60 million freeze?" Back at the counter, Marcus took a deliberate sip of his coffee. Around him, life resumed. Plates scraped, orders called, the neon sign humming its lullaby. Yet the world outside had shifted. He'd reclaimed more than a project. He'd reignited dignity for countless veterans and reminded every viewer, wherever you are, that true honor can't be budgeted or designed in a boardroom. Have you ever witnessed someone reclaim their dignity against the odds? Tell us where you're watching from in the comments, because every voice matters. The morning sun streamed through the panoramic windows of Skyway Air's headquarters, but inside the leadership suites, it felt like high noon in a pressure cooker. Alarms still pinged on half the screens. Samantha Rhodes burst in, arms flailing, eyes wild. "Emily, get me the VP of Infrastructure on the line, now!" she snapped at her assistant. Her perfectly coiffed hair felt like it was suffocating her. Behind her, two junior flight attendants hovered, faces pale. Emily tapped furiously on her tablet. I can't reach him," she stammered. "Lines are busy, and the board just forwarded your suspension notice." Rhodes swallowed hard, vision swimming. She'd built her entire career on poise and precision, and now, nothing. She swiped her badge across the door reader, barged into the IT war room, and demanded to know who'd pulled the plug on Project Nightingale. Meanwhile, in the corner of that same room, Marcus Locke's image flickered on a shared news feed. Rachel's footage showed him sipping coffee as the project froze. Executives leaned in, jaws clenched. "He's a shareholder?" one whispered. "A homeless shareholder," another shot back. Back at the Red Rail Diner, Rhodes's colleagues, flight attendants who once laughed at Marcus, now hovered at the counter, nursing weak lattes. One of them, Jenna, finally whispered, "I saw his dog tags. I didn't know." Guilt washed over them. Each second ticked by like an eternity. Upstairs in the suite, Rhodes's phone buzzed with text alerts. "You've been trending since dawn. Your suspension is live. Board meeting in 10 minutes. Forget damage control." She'd lost her weapon. Authority. Across town, Marcus stood outside the diner, exhaling a long breath. He'd watched the chaos unfold on live streams, and a complex mix of emotions tugged at him. Pride that his silent call had reverberated through corporate halls, anger at how carelessly they'd treated him, regret that people so quick to mock would face ruin. He shook his head, forcing himself to let go of the bitterness. This wasn't about revenge. It was about respect. He walked back inside the diner, shoulders squared. He owed these women a chance to see him as a man, not a punchline. Samantha Rhodes caught his eye as he passed. No words, just a slow nod. In that gesture, she acknowledged his victory and her own fall from grace. The diner's neon sign hummed softly behind them, silent witness to a power shift no one could deny. By mid-afternoon, Riverbrook's quiet streets were anything but. Local news radios buzzed with Rachel Miller's clip, and every cafe and bar television looped the footage of Marcus Locke's calm declaration. At the post office, clerks paused mid-stamp to whisper, "He really did it. Froze $60 million with that little burner phone." A mom in a pickup pulled over just to rewind the viral post on her phone. Inside the Red Rail diner, Rachel set her tablet on the counter, refreshing social feeds. "We've topped 1 million views," she said, eyes bright. Tables around them hummed with conversation, some in praise, others in stunned disbelief. A retired school teacher leaned over and quietly asked Marcus, "Were you nervous?" He shrugged, tapping his coffee mug. "Every second," he admitted, "but I knew it was worth it." On the flight crew's private chat thread, alarms went off. "Urgent PR meeting at 5, one message blinked. Samantha Rhodes watched the notification pop up on her phone and sighed. Her colleagues, once so confident, sat huddled, scrolling through hate mail and support messages alike. Jenna, the newest attendant, glanced up at Marcus and murmured, "I never thought we'd see this day." Outside, a small caravan of veteran support vans rolled up, bearing banners that read, "Honor Locke Service" and "Veterans Deserve Respect." Volunteers set up a mini press stage, inviting Marcus to speak. He stepped onto a folding riser, sunlight glinting off his faded dog tags. Without notes, he spoke. "I walked into this diner as a guest. Tonight, I stand here as someone you chose to listen to. Thank you for giving us a voice." Applause rose in waves. Rachel caught the moment on video. Phones lifted, likes and shares soaring. Marcus scanned the faces. Townsfolk, vets in ball caps, even a few flight attendants peeking from behind the diner glass. Later, at home in the abandoned rail station, Marcus sat on a crate, scrolling mentions from Pittsburgh to Portland. He paused at one comment. "You've inspired me to call my own rep tomorrow." A soft smile crossed his face. Pride mingled with humility. He'd sparked more than headlines. He'd ignited a movement. Before turning in for the night, he whispered into the empty station, "Wherever you are, thank you for listening." In that echoed promise lay the true victory. A community awakened, a veteran reclaimed, and dignity restored, one silent call at a time. Rachel leaned in close, the din of the diner fading around them. She set her recorder on the table, giving Marcus a reassuring nod. "There's something else you told me you wanted to share," she said softly. He took a slow breath, lifting his gaze to meet hers. "Most people think I'm just a homeless veteran," he began, voice measured. Across the room, flight attendants hovered at a booth, curiosity replacing scorn. Patrons glanced up from their meals. Marcus straightened, glancing at his dog tags. "But I'm not just that." He paused, looking down at the table as if weighing every word. Rachel's eyes widened. This was the moment she'd been waiting for. I own 5% of this airline's parent company. His hand brushed the laminated menu, tapping gently. I invested back when I was still active duty, bought in under the radar, because I believed in their mission. A hush fell. Even the diner's jukebox seemed to quiet. Samantha Rhodes pressed a hand to her mouth, disbelief etched on her face. Jenna's latte clinked against the saucer as she set it down too hard. Rachel lifted her phone, capturing the stunned faces. "You're a shareholder?" she whispered, voice cracking. He nodded once. "According to corporate bylaws, that gives me automatic authority to invoke a lockup on capital expenditures. It's why they had to freeze the $60 million project immediately. No appeals, no delays." Conversation rippled through the room. A retired teacher muttered, "He's been sitting on power this whole time?" A mechanic sipping coffee spat out a gasp. On the flight crew's private channel, frantic texts scrolled in real time. "He's a shareholder?" Marcus felt a rush of something unexpected. Pride wrapped in relief. The secret he'd carried for years, his fallback plan if justice ever ran out, had just changed everything forever. Yet under that surge, a quiet tremor of vulnerability. Would people now see him as opportunistic instead of honorable? He leaned back, offering a small, wry smile. "I didn't want to use it," he said, voice gentler. "But when respect was denied, I had to remind them who I was." Rachel set the recorder aside. This is bigger than any of us imagined." As whispers swelled and phones lifted, Marcus felt the weight of both worlds, veteran and shareholder, merge into a single truth. Sometimes the most unexpected power lies in the hands we least expect. The next morning, headlines screamed across every newsstand. "Skyway Airboard oust Purser Rhodes and all involved flight crew in wake of 60-hour slim freeze." Local stations cut to live feeds of the Boardroom, where CEO Margaret Ellis, flanked by lawyers and new interim directors, read a brief statement. "Effective immediately, Samantha Rhodes and her team are relieved of all duties. We will enact a full leadership restructure to restore public trust," Ellis declared, voice steady but weary. On screen, Rhodes sat rigid, a far cry from the confident purser who'd boasted at the diner. Behind her, other flight attendants looked ashen. Once a tight-knit crew, now branded by scandal. At the stock ticker in Times Square, Skyway shares tumbled. The price, once poised for a steady climb, plunged nearly 20% by noon. A financial analyst on CNBC called it one of the most dramatic intraday reversals in regional carrier history. Back in Riverbrook, the Red Rail diner felt oddly empty. Regulars pored over newspapers, murmuring about the board's decision. A retired school teacher folded her paper with a satisfied sigh. "Finally, accountability," she said to the waitress. "He deserved better." Marcus Locke slipped in through the back door, dog tags tucked under his shirt. He eased onto his stall at the counter, glancing at Rachel's iPad streaming the board announcement. Satisfaction swelled. This was more than poetic justice. It was proof that respect wasn't negotiable. Yet beneath the triumph lay a hollow certainty. The fight for dignity ran deeper than firing a few executives. Rachel slid his coffee across. "They actually did it," she said softly. Marcus nodded, tracing the rim of his mug. "They've hit reset," he replied, voice calm. "Now it's on us to fill the void with something better." Across town, community leaders convened at the Veterans Center. Plans were laid for a dignity and service program, offering job training, counseling, and safe housing. Sponsors pledged millions in private donations, more than enough to offset any corporate losses. Where Skyway saw a PR crisis, Riverbrook saw an opportunity for renewal. At dusk, Marcus walked outside the diner, hands in pockets, dog tags warm against his chest. He breathed in the crisp air, watching as the neon sign flickered on. This time, the glow felt liberating. He dismantled a small piece of the old guard, But rebuilding true honor would take many more calls, countless voices, and a shared belief that every individual deserves respect. And as the lights of Riverbrook brightened for evening, Marcus felt ready to lead that charge. The day after the board's sweeping ouster, Marcus found himself stepping onto the polished hardwood floor of Riverbrook's Veteran Support Hall. Banners reading, "Dignity Never Fades," lined the walls. Tables draped in navy and gold displayed photos of local heroes, some grinning in fatigues, others in civilian clothes, their faces lined with stories. Rachel stood at the entrance, greeting donors and veterans alike. Her eyes lit up when she saw Marcus approach. "They saved you a seat," she said, pointing to a front-row chair beside the keynote podium. He sat down, smoothing his coat as the crowd hushed. At a small table nearby, proud families held hands. Wives in floral scarves, children clutching Honor Locke service signs. Community leaders in business attire murmured greetings, their respect genuine and warm. Mayor Ellis took the stage first, tapping the mic. "Riverbrook owes a debt to our veterans," she began. "But tonight, we honor one man who reminded us all what respect really means." Applause rippled through the room. Then it was Marcus's turn. He rose slowly, dog tags catching the warm stage lights. He cleared his throat and looked out at the sea of faces, people he hadn't known cared so deeply. "When I served, I believed in something greater than myself," he said, voice steady. "I fought for our country because I believed you'd stand by those willing to sacrifice. Tonight, you've stood by me." He paused as soft applause built into sustained clapping. A matronly woman in the third row dabbed her eyes. "Dignity never fades isn't just a slogan," he continued. "It's a promise. To every veteran who feels invisible, to every person told they don't belong, we see you, we honor you, and we have your back." He stepped down, shaking hands and hugging old comrades. Nearby, Rachel recorded the moment, and even the flight attendants, now volunteering at the event, offered quiet apologies as they pinned Honor Locke service ribbons to his lapel. Later, at the fundraising reception, pledges poured in. A local bank committed $100,000 to the new Veteran Housing Wing. The high school's ROTC program volunteered to mentor at-risk youth. As the evening wound down, Marcus slipped outside to the quiet porch. He breathed deep, smelling the crisp spring air. For the first time in years, he felt more than just a survivor. He felt truly home. Behind him, laughter and conversation drifted out the doors. In the soft glow of the hall's lights, Marcus knew the real work was only beginning. But tonight, he allowed himself one unguarded smile. His dignity had returned, stronger than ever. Marcus stepped into the Riverbrook Regional Airport one crisp morning, dog tags resting against his shirt. The Welcome Home Veterans banner fluttered overhead, and the soft hum of rolling suitcases filled the air. As he made his way down the polished corridor, airport staff paused in their duties to offer respectful nods and quiet smiles, gestures he'd longed for but rarely received. He paused before a small alcove labeled Heroes of Riverbrook, where a permanent exhibit displayed photos and artifacts honoring local veterans. A uniformed attendant guided him forward with a gentle, "Sir, would you like to add your story to our wall?" Marcus placed his dog tags on a velvet pad beside old campaign ribbons and faded letters. His fingers lingered on the cool metal, each tag a reminder of battles fought and brothers lost. He traced the embossed letters, his name cut deep into steel, and felt a swell of pride that mingled with a finger's worth of sorrow. Across the exhibit stood a photograph of him from 20 years earlier, a younger Marcus in full combat fatigues, eyes fierce with determination. He remembered that man, brave, unyielding, certain of his place in the world. Now, at 60, he saw himself anew, a survivor, a storyteller, a man whose fight for dignity had become something far larger than personal vindication. Nearby, a retired teacher and a nurse paused to watch. "He's the one who froze that fleet upgrade, isn't he?" the teacher murmured, voice filled with admiration. The nurse nodded. "He reminded us all what respect really costs." Marcus offered them a small nod and continued his walk, the morning light casting long shadows on the tile floor. He felt a calm settle in his chest, the steady, grounding kind that follows a long storm. No longer consumed by the injustices of the past, he carried forward the knowledge that every step he took, every story he shared, contributed to a collective healing. At the exhibit's exit, he paused once more. "Thank you," he whispered, not to the walls or the photos, but to the countless veterans whose sacrifices shaped him, and to the community that finally saw him. As he turned and walked toward the baggage claim, the soft echoes of his footsteps behind him signaled a truth he'd forged with every silent call and every public stand. Dignity, once reclaimed, lights the way home. Marcus walked down the familiar sidewalk toward the Red Rail Diner. The snow long since melted and replaced by fresh spring blooms. The once frosted windows were now clear, revealing a bright interior humming with conversation and laughter. Under new ownership, the place had been renovated. Warm wood accents, fresh paint, and a mural honoring local veterans stretching across one wall. He paused at the door, adjusting the lapel of his donated charcoal blazer. A small sign read, "Welcome home, Marcus Locke." Inside, the morning rush was in full swing. Families sharing pancakes, travelers grabbing coffee, and a new waitress calling out orders with genuine warmth. "Marcus, over here," Rachel called from a table tucked in the corner. She waved him in, a broad smile lighting her face. On the table lay a neatly wrapped plate of eggs, bacon, and toast. "On the house," she said, her eyes shining. He shook his head, chuckling softly. "Thank you," he replied, voice thick with emotion. As he dug in, staff members paused to nod and offer their respect. Samantha Rhodes, no longer in uniform, hovered nearby. She quietly formed a line with other former flight attendants. When it was her turn, she stepped forward, placing a small bouquet of wildflowers on his table. "I'm sorry," she said, eyes downcast. Marcus nodded, accepting both the flowers and her apology with a gentle grace. Later, he left the diner and made his way to the newly dedicated Turner Veterans Community Center, a former factory transformed into apartments, counseling rooms, and a bustling community garden. A crisp ribbon-cutting ceremony took place under flowering dogwood trees. Q's drone hovered overhead, capturing the moment. General Whitaker, Ava Washington, Rachel, and dozens of local volunteers filled the plaza. As Marcus approached the podium, children wearing Veterans for Justice t-shirts lined the walkway, clapping. He placed a framed photo of his best friend, Malik Johnson, on a memorial wall adorned with dozens of dog tags, each representing a veteran lost or forgotten. He turned to face the crowd, eyes bright. "This isn't just about one man," he said quietly. "It's about every veteran who was invisible, every voice we helped raise. Thank you for choosing respect, for choosing each other." As applause swelled, Marcus stepped back, letting others take the spotlight. Among the cheers and the flutter of ribbons, he felt something he hadn't in years: true belonging. The journey from that diner stool to this moment was painful and long, but he'd led a community home, one silent call at a time.